Shalom. Greetings. Peace, everyone. Let me know if you can hear me. Let me know if I'm clear. If I am clear, put a one in the chat. Give me a thumbs up. Um, Anytime I come outside, there's always a little bit of milling around I have to do. But it's midday motivation, and we're all in the space together. It is 12:40, so I apologize for my tardiness, but we are here. And so today I really wanted us to start looking at and exploring just like why we have wheat allergies. What's really going on, you know? Um, and I think for those of you who are in the space and are joining, you know, I think of a couple of things. I think about wheat belly, which you've probably heard of before. You've probably heard of the term wheat belly. You've probably heard of wheat belly as is associated to, like having a gut pretty much. And sometimes it's related to consuming wheat, wheat heavy things or any of the foods or drinks that we really enjoy that are made with wheat. But there are many other things that are, you know, it isn't obvious that those foods contain gluten. And it's really important to pay attention to that because we have, I think many of us have gotten accustomed to the way our body reacts to certain foods, and we kind of just think, hey, well, there isn't anything really wrong, right? There isn't anything really wrong. It's just I have a little bit of a digestive upset. We don't actually realize that what we're having is a consistent patterned response to something that doesn't really sit well in our stomachs, right? So the mucus buildup will, obviously happen for those of you who are, um, can already start identifying with that. You'll probably find too that there's digestive issues, ongoing, consistent. So all of those are connected to gluten. And we're going to really explore why. All right. So peace and welcome, sovereigns, to those of you who are in the space. Um, And once you start coming in, I'll just greet you all. I can't see anyone just yet, but I'll keep going. Um, Today's live really is, again, a conversation around gluten, what I consider the hidden nemesis, because, yeah, there's a hidden aspect to it. And we'll talk about that toward the end of our live today. But in exploring the idea of it being gluten being a hidden nemesis, I really started to look at the term nemesis, right? And when we really explore the term, you uncover that a nemesis is directly connected to retribution. Actually, it is the name of a Greek deity that is actually responsible for divine retribution, right? So when you think about a nemesis, is expressed as the arch enemy, right? Something that leads to your downfall. And I said to myself, wow, this really does tie in directly with the way gluten or the effect that gluten has on the body system. And I think that I think that is very true because of all the side effects and all of the organs and the dysfunction and the imbalance that it creates within our own bodies, right? Our system, you know. As I said before, the bloating, the digestive dysfunction, and issues of mucus buildup, all because of gluten. Now, I'm not painting gluten as such a horrible thing or a bad thing. Like today's mathematics is understanding. So the truth is, it's important to understand what we consume. It's important to understand what we engage in or engage with. And through understanding, we'll better learn how to work with foods or how to work with our system, right? How to honor our system by probably eliminating certain things. That's the key, right? That's the real key here. So I'm just going to pause and jump into the chat, see if there's anyone um, you have any questions or anything that you want to share, and if you have anything to share, just let me know. But it is a beautiful, it's a beautiful Thursday, and we're live as usual. So it's always good to see and hear everyone in the space. I appreciate you all coming in, and I'm just going to jump in and continue to share. So whenever we hear about gluten, I think one of the first things we always think about is its connection um, to wheat, right? And so this that's a good thing. Actually, when you hear gluten, I want you to constantly think about the fact that the word gluten actually refers to a it's referring to a collective or a group of proteins that are called prolamines, right? So prolamines are very interesting. We crave them. That's why we love the wheat. It's that particular protein. But, prolamines are found in things like wheat, rye, and barley. So it's really hard to get rid of it. It's really hard to pull yourself away from um, consuming it, especially if you have wheat allergies, because it's in everything. It's in everything. But there's a reason why it's your nemesis, right? And remember what I said, a nemesis is something that kind of leads to your downfall. It's your arch enemy, right? But this is hidden because it's hidden, it's layered inside of so many foods, and sometimes it doesn't even make it to the package label, right? So very critical to think about the way it sneaks uh, into our foods and into our food system, and sometimes goes unchecked or unnoticed. The only way to notice it is to notice how your body responds or reacts to certain foods, and that's gonna be the key. All right, that's normally gonna be the key. So I touched on Nemesis. I touched on its connection to the meaning and expression as an arch enemy. And I also spoke a little bit about um, prolamines because I said that glutens are actually a group of proteins that are called prolamines and they're present in rye, barley, and wheat. But there's a reason, right? There's a reason why they wreak havoc and cause havoc to our system. And you know, one of the main reasons I wanted to touch on, I didn't want to not touch on this piece, is the fact that it does not, like, it's very resistant to being broken down. It's very resistant to complete digestion. So that's the big issue. The big issue is that prolamines, they fight in. They resist digestion. They don't want to digest completely. It's because they cannot, right? Our system is not designed to completely digest these particular proteins. And so I'm not saying don't eat them, but I am saying this is why they have such an effect on you when you consume some of those, what you consider delicious, crispy, crunchy, bready, cakey, creamy, cookie like um, treats and foods. They actually they actually sit in the small intestine, right? They sit in the body, and those undigested parts or components of the protein, which in this case at this point is it kind of sits there and it kind of traverses the intestinal wall and it gets into the other parts of the body, of course, through the blood, and that becomes a problem. That's where the issue lies. So now you have parts of undigested proteins, right, sitting in the body. Now, I wanted to go back to um, some of the conversation we had last strong. Some of the conversation we had last strong actually allowed us to dig into health and heritage. And, like in health and heritage, we actually realized that there was calculation we all made, right? So many of us were able to make this calculation that our habits, right, specifically our habits around food, our habits around food and culture is directly due to what inherently, right, what we have inherently taken on as behaviors that have been passed on to us, right? And we continue with those particular behaviors. And again, food and culture. And those habits become a part of what we do. The problem is it continues beyond generations, right? So we'll find that if we pay attention to family members who have had long-standing issues with um, gut indigestion and just bloating and a lot of the like a lot of mucus in the system, if we pay attention to our family members who actually have that ongoing issue, and we also pay attention to the foods and their habits around food consumption, and even just some of the cultural things like beer drinking. Woo, that's a huge part of um that's a huge part of the patterns and behaviors that I've noticed in my family. And people do what they want. You select to do and elect to do what is necessary for you to survive, to live, to feel like you enjoy life. However, it's really important to pay attention to how those things that we select or elect to do affect our journey. And if we were to look at those and observe those patterns with a reflective eye, right? A critical eye, we can identify gaps or areas that need change and change them. And so some of those calculations led me to just looking at gluten, because gluten, again, as I said before, I grew up in the Caribbean and I have seen, beer drinking is the thing to do, right? And as we know, like beer is made with, and many options of beer have gluten, right? So my observation is that many who drank beer, and many of the men, you'd notice that they have protruding guts, or very big balloon like bellies, right? And balloon belly is very similar to like what's considered wheat belly, right? So those are all side effects of consuming wheat. And that's what happens when the body, like you have to give the body its due, right? You gotta pay for that, right? That's a bit of the retribution, right? So that's the aspect of the nemesis coming back. If you consume this thing, and I am on my body's, or the body is unable to digest it, because again, it doesn't have adequate enzymes that can break these particles down completely, right? These particular amino acids, and then they're just sitting in our body half broken down. Then they're parts of the larger units that are able to traverse the walls of the intestine and get into the body and just sit there, and they cause allergic reaction and mucus buildup, as I said before. So part of part of the point that I wanted to bring up too is that the wheat that we're consuming, um, the wheat that we're consuming currently are most times GMO wheat, and genetically modified organisms are, like we've been discovering how the original foods that we consume are very different and have a very different effect on our bodies compared to foods that have been genetically modified. And so this is one of the reasons why we have such, you know, huge health issues, crazy health issues that go undetected for a long time because of wheat consumption. Again, I'm not villainizing wheat, but I am saying take a look at the presence of gluten in our everyday meal prep and our everyday meal consumption, or you know, drink consumption, and start identifying those areas where you can remove it. Start identifying um, some of the habits that we have that can be reversed or altered, right? Just from eliminating one thing, you know, eliminating one thing. And so here's why I also say it's hidden. I also say that, like its gluten is the hidden nemesis because of its presence in so many things. Like I touched on the aspect of it being inside of beer, wheat is used to make beer, along with other grains too. But it's used to make beer. But it's a nemesis because consider this, right? Many of the the veggie, many of the excuse me, many of the veggie burgers that we something just flying. I'm gonna pick it up after. But many of the veggie burgers that we consume, right, that are plant based, um, we'll find that they are filled with wheat and filled with, you know, sometimes they add rye or barley to it. Sometimes they add soy even. We're not really focused on soy today. That's a whole different discussion. But they're added not because they sometimes they do add, but minimal nutritional value. They're added because they're binders and fillers, right? They binders because they help to keep the gluten. Of course, is very um, sticky, right? So when you say something is glutinous, it's like a glue. My goodness. Imagine you use, growing up as you see water and flour is used and mixed to make um uh oh my gosh, to make craft, right? It almost, and when it dries it almost looks like cement. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? So, you know, um I really want us to consider all of the foods that we consume, such as, again, plant-based veggie burger alternatives, because these alternatives again continue to use cheap binders and fillers. So that's why I consider it a hidden nemesis because it's in all of those prepackaged, highly processed foods that we consume. But I'm not done. I am not done because gluten, specifically wheat gluten, is also found in a lot of the treats that you consume, the cakes, the pizzas, the the cookies, the naan breads, all of them, right? But it's also found in other convenience foods that you don't think or consider, right? You don't even consider it. A matter of fact, you would pick these up and you won't consider to look at the label, right? But it's in there. And there are times when you can't see it in the label because, again, the food product that is used to make the dish, let's say you go to a restaurant, the food product that is used to make a dish doesn't always include that ingredient. Even though cafes and restaurants are required to include that wheat allergy on there, sometimes a lot of it gets lost, especially when, again, these prolamines are used as binders and fillers. But they're also found in processed meat, ready-made meals, sauces, spices, and as I said, soups, right? So whether it's a canned soup or box soup, those are some of the places that wheat or gluten or prolamines can hide. And you want to make sure you are diligent about that. What does it cause? So gluten can cause, again, mucus buildup in the system, weak belly, ballooning of the gut, um, gut digestive issues, definitely, and gut discomfort as well. So you may not feel um, bloated, you may not look bloated, um, you may not be bloated at all, but you'll find that you're having cramps, right? Cramping and in the lower part of the abdominal, and many times it is a reaction to wheat. It's a reaction to the undigested particles of these amino acids, these proteins that the body can't digest adequately. But you'll also find that, gluten and prolamines actually can lead to the lowering of the good bacteria, right? And so not only is it difficult for the body to digest the wheat itself, but it reduces the good bacteria, and that actually leads to an inability to process or break down and digest greens, right? Especially if you're shifting to a plant based diet, it's going to make it very difficult to break that down. So I just wanted to share really quickly a little bit of insight and some, just so that we can move to a place of understanding, right? Just by exploring the simple and fundamental um, things about the foods that we consume, because that's going to help us to know how to select foods properly, know how to um, actually eliminate certain foods from our diet, because that elimination can actually lead to reversing some of the conditions that like we have resigned to live with. All right. So before, I also wanted to touch on three conditions, right? There are three things that you might find that are related to gluten in the system specifically. And that is the what is considered celiac disease, which is an autoimmune, right? So it's like it's the body actually attacking good cells, the immune system attacking good cells in the body. Um, and so celiac can be very severe. Like I remember, I'll tell a quick story. I remember my first encounter with celiac. It wasn't, I didn't necessarily have a wheat allergy, or it wasn't necessarily me. It wasn't a relative of mine. It was someone who I worked with, and you know, I had seen her for so many months, just always moving, with energy. She's always, time function. She's always a multitasker, and she was an older woman. And when I saw her, her whole face was, she had a broke out. Her face was filled with like a rash. Her skin was raised all over. And there were a few blotches of red, but the skin was just raised on her face all over. And when you look at her hands, she had patches of areas that looked like a rash, but they were raised even higher, right? And it was irritating to her. You could tell that she wanted to probably scratch or wish she could soothe it, but she couldn't. And she said, she was so tired. She was lethargic. It was very difficult for her to keep up with her regular schedule or her regular routine. And, like I asked her, well, what's wrong? Is it the sun? Is it just the stress? It was actually a wheat allergy. She actually found out a couple of days before that she actually had celiac, and I don't think she knew it all this time. So it may have been present. Maybe she ignored it. Maybe she ignored some of the symptoms that were um, probably perpetuated by her consuming, lots of flour-based foods, lots of breads and cakes and things like that. But she didn't. Um, but it just showed up. And sometimes I think even stress can trigger some of these some of these responses in the body. So, for her, it was really about changing up her diet and really taking a look at um, what she ate from then on forward. And it took her a while. It took her a while for her skin to return to normal and for the patches of skin to, just kind of no longer look inflamed, because you could tell that it was inflammation, right? And that's another thing that you'll find, that wheat will cause inflammation throughout the body, even in the joints, right? So those are some of the things that I wanted to share in terms of gluten and it being a nemesis. Um, for those of you who are joining us, give thanks for being in the space, whether you're here on time right now or you're going to join later on. Um, Please put your questions in the chat, leave your comments in the chat. Similarly to my story of the sister with celiac or just observing the men in my family who for long periods of time just had protruding guts because of the consumption of beer and other wheat-based foods. Please tell me your stories. Please feel free to jump in the chat or jump into the comment section and share any of your own observations around the consumption of wheat in your family, right? Because I want to kind of continue with that thread of heritage, right? I want to continue with that thread of looking at generations before us and our relatives and being able to pinpoint some of the ongoing issues so that we can fix them and change them moving forward. All right. So, peace to all of you, those of you who are again joining and are in the chat. Today's mathematics led us to a calculation of understanding. It's understanding and cipher. And so it is important to, it's important to have full knowledge of our life and what's going on around us. But most importantly, to have a clarity about the knowledge of our bodies, our systems, and the other things that are happening in our environment, and how those are a reflection of what's happening internally. And, when I understand something, I have that clarity of thought, right? There's a level of comprehension, but it's not just random things. I'm having an understanding of the facts and the knowledge and the truth that I see around me, and I'm able to share it with others, and I'm able to build with others in my cipher, in my community, so that they too can help me to understand, but also it would lead them, that sharing would lead them to an understanding as well. Wellness is yours for those of you who have joined us. Wellness is always yours, is always your choice. But make sure you make choices based on knowledge. Make sure you make choices based on wisdom, wise counsel, and understanding. Peace, everyone. Peace. Oh, for those of you who are listening in or jumping on, I will be breaking down or doing a movie understanding with my Sister Deidre Sully, later on this evening. And I will definitely place a quick post on my Instagram page, but um, it will be on the Enlightenment and Transformation channel, YouTube channel. So I thank you all if you jump on and you listen, participate in the chat, and thank you to Chief Ria for creating that platform for us to, have a space to grow and learn and to share with others. Peace.